It's a new year, and with that, all eyes of the D&D community turn to the 2023 releases, which were announced a few months ago at an event called Wizards Presents. What should we expect from them? Have they got you excited? And what indications do they provide us for the future of D&D? Why has Wizards of the Coast not released your favorite campaign setting for 5th edition yet? Are we ever going to see Dark Sun in 5e? What about Forgotten Realms? Are we stuck with the Sword Coast forever, or will we see products focused on other regions? Everybody loves player options books, and yet, 9 years into 5th edition, the only two released are Xantar's Guides to Everything and Tasha's Cauldron for Everything. When should we expect a new one? Why they take so long to be published? Don't they have good sales? Hello and welcome to the Deep Dice Press. We are a bunch of friends on their 30s who have played D&D since our teen years and who love role-playing and storytelling. In a given day, it just so happened that we were all going through career transitions and thought, why not give a shot on developing D&D products? And that's how our indie D&D publisher was born. Small in size, but big in aspirations. Our purpose is to take your D&D adventures to the magical excitement and deep immersion we experience with the epic tales and narratives of humankind. If you think our number of followers does not reflect the quality of our content, say the mystic words and perform the necessary gestures to hit the like, subscribe and bell buttons with 3 glowing darts. It's simple, you don't even need to roll for an attack. You can also use a mage hand to grab the links for our social media in the description down below. I don't know about you, but every time D&D is about to announce a new release, I get filled with anticipation. What's the next adventure going to be about? Are they finally going to release a new Forgotten Realms campaign book? For the first time, we're starting a year already knowing what all releases are gonna be. And I confess, I'm quite divided about that. It's great to know the new releases pipeline, but on the other hand, I guess I'm gonna miss being surprised by an unexpected announcement. Anyways, my curiosity about the subject is such that I spent some time trying to figure out what are the drivers and the strategy behind new releases. I also found a way to estimate one of the most well-guarded D&D secrets, the sales of each product line. So, I wanted to share with you today 3 takeaways I took from all that study. 1. What are the best-selling D&D products and what is the sales gap among them? The results were very surprising to me, and they helped me to understand a few things, such as the likely reason why one D&D will release new core rules books, and why there are so few expanded rules books and so many adventures releases. 2. What's the strategy behind the release of new D&D books, including the reasons for Wizards to test new and different content for expanded rules books, and the mix among new, classic, and Magic the Gathering campaign settings. And 3. What should we expect from the 5 D&D releases of 2023, including Planescape, Glory of Giants, The Book of Many Things, and 2 new adventures. So join us, won't you? Let's start talking about what are the best-selling D&D products and how that drives the strategy of new releases and the D&D product line as a whole. What are the reasons to publish new core rules books under 1D&D? Since 1D&D was announced last July, much was written and said about the changes it might bring to the game and what people like and dislike about the initiative. But I haven't seen much discussion about this one fundamental question. Why the release of new core rules? I'll try to answer that, considering what might be the marketing strategy behind its release. I worked for many years as a strategy consultant for corporations. One of the things that we would do in this job is called competitors' perceived strategy. Most of the times, the business strategy of a given firm is kept as a well-guarded secret. So what we would do was examine the company's actions and try to reverse engineer what their business strategy was. If we were to have a look at the roster of published D&D books, what could we say about its perceived strategy? First of all, what are the best-selling D&D books? Could it be that new releases would be products similar to those bestsellers? Would that be true? We can use the total number of product reviews in Amazon as a proxy to product sales. I would expect that the higher the volume of evaluations, the higher the sales volume. And whatever sells more is a good indication of what the D&D fan base likes the most and is most inclined to buy. Considering that, the best-selling product line are precisely core rules books. If we score them as 100, we can see the relative ranking of other product lines. Rules expansion books only sell 30% of core rules books do, followed by starter sets with 20%, campaign settings with 12%, and adventures with 9%. And yet, there are only 3 core rules books and 19 adventures. Why wouldn't D&D publish more of its bestsellers, and why so many publications of its least-selling product lines? I think that actually explains one of the main reasons for the 1D&D new core rules books. After all, they sell much more than all other books. I can imagine the amount of pressure that Hasbro executives probably put on the D&D studio for new core rules books. There's a good reason to resist the Siren's alluring song, though. D&D 3e was doing just fine when Wizards decided to launch 4e, a critical and commercial disaster and a major step back for the company. It seems to have been a well-learned lesson in the most painful body part of a corporation, its pockets. The D&D studio not only bravely resisted the pressure and temptation of releasing a new edition for 10 long years, but also found a way to settle on a win-win for the company and D&D fans, announcing they're getting rid of the concept of new editions, recognizing and stabilizing 5e rules as their gold standard, compromising on evolving on those rules, and keeping other publications backwards compatible. From what I've seen from 1D&D so far, I find it very promising. Rules that are simpler, more flexible, more balanced, and more focused on role-playing. Even better, no more pushing the reset button, and thanks the gods for that. 1D&D seems to be a compromise between the corporation's desires of a new release of core rules books, its best-selling product line, and the fan-base appraisal of 5th edition books and expectation of keeping up the current edition releases valid for play as long as possible. And considering that our beloved game is also a business, I'll take it. It's pretty much the best compromise we could get, in my humble opinion. Everybody loves player options books. And yet, 9 years into 5th edition, the only 2 released are Xanatar's Guides to Everything and Tasha's Cauldron for Everything. When should we expect a new one? Why they take so long to be published? Don't they have good sales? What about campaign settings? Why so few of them compared to the 19 adventures released so far? Those are actually good questions, especially if you consider that if we take the number of Amazon product reviews as a proxy to sales, the best-selling product lines are exactly the ones that are released less frequently than the others. Take rules expansion books, for example. They're the second best-selling product line. I'd expect there would be an even higher number of such releases. Why that doesn't happen? I believe the reason is protecting the game balance and simplicity. Think with me, we're 9 years into 5e and there's been only one new character class released, the Artificer. New classes may have huge impact in game balance and in complexity. The same goes with subclasses. The initial 42 subclasses, including the 2 of the Dungeon Master's Guide, have already hit a total of 117. That's almost 3 times as many. Xenator's Guide to Everything alone introduced 31 new subclasses, and Tasha's Squadron of Everything another 30. Imagine if there were 30 new subclasses released every year. I think it would stress the fanbase, who would have serious trouble on keeping up, and it would risk game balance. In the long term, such a strategy would destroy one of the most valuable 5e assets, its streamlined rules. Starter sets are another interesting product line. The very reason of such products to exist limits the number of products that would make sense to launch. They exist to introduce new players to the game, so their goals would be two-folded. One, increasing the previous product quality in order to make a starter set as suitable for a newbie as possible. And two, providing a good array of different starter sets to match different tastes. I believe both those goals are well in place with the latest release, the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle set, and the current offer of 5 different starter sets. Surprisingly, Adventures are the least sold product line, despite the many of them that have been published. I believe the reason for that is that Adventures are the running blood that keeps all the system working. Many of us love to homebrew our adventures, but it takes a lot of time to do so. Releasing a couple of adventures every year is the only way of dealing with the heart of a successful game. Keeps fans constantly playing. If campaign settings like Spelljammer sell better than adventures, why would they be less published? I think that question actually helps us to understand the recent Shadow of the Dragon Queen release. Many were expecting Dragonlance to be published as a campaign setting and not an adventure, but again, adventures are needed to keep the fanbase running. I believe that to be the reason why recent campaign setting releases like Strixhaven and Spelljammer dedicate many other pages for adventures, and why recent adventures, such as Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel and Shadow of the Dragon Queen, introduce a new setting to 5e. I think the goal of this kind of merger between those two product lines is to accommodate the better sales potential of campaign settings with the need of publishing adventures to keep fans playing. And that's why I expect this trend to continue in future releases, as it is grounded on these two powerful market drivers. Next, let's discuss what's the strategy behind the release of new D&D products. I think I managed to grasp a couple of insights that helped me understand why some fan-favorite campaign settings took so long to be released, and why D&D seems to be experimenting with a couple of new and different types of content. If you love D&D books with bestiaries and new player options, you're probably excited about the 2023 releases of Bigby Presents Glory of Giants and the Book of Many Things. It seems, however, those books will test a different kind of content than we used to. What are those differences and what are the reasons for them? To better understand that, we can delve into previous product sales figures, using the volume of Amazon reviews as a proxy. That shows which products sell more and by what margin. It would be a natural move to test different content for products that are not performing as well as the best-selling ones. That helps us to understand why some of the new D&D releases will probably be different to previous ones. But I can think of other reasons beyond that too. So let's break down each of the D&D main product lines to understand how their sales perform and what may be Wizards' strategy behind the release and what indications that brings for future books. Let's start with the core rules books. We'll use the average sales estimate for all 3 core rules books as a 100 base index for comparison. As we would expect, the Player's Handbook sells over 50% more than the remaining 2 core books, focused on Dungeon Masters. That should not be too much of a surprise, considering there are more players than DMs. I was actually expecting the difference to be much greater. It would seem to me that we have lots of players out there who like to have the Dungeon Master Guide and the Monster Manual to read for fun. Would that be your case? Moving on to starter sets. When we break them down, we can see how the crossover starter sets sell much fewer units. Does that mean they were a failure and that we should not expect new crossovers like that? Quite the opposite, in my opinion. I think those products have a very strategic reason to be. They're probably focusing on attracting specifically the Stranger Things and Rick and Morty fan base. In other words, they're aimed at new D&D players who would probably never try the game if it were not for those products. And that's the best new D&D fans you can attract, as there are also new customers that will come back to the game store many other times to shop other products. So don't be surprised if you see new starter set crossovers from other pop culture icons over the next years. When we have a look on rules expansion book sales, there's additional insight we can get. Bestiaries sell only a quarter of what the Monster Manual has sold. No wonder they're trying other content formats, such as Fizban's Treasury of Dragons and Bigby Presents Glory of Giants. I think Wizards wants to test how much of an upsell those books would be able to reach, compared to a Monster Manual 2 or 3 as we have had in previous editions. One could argue that Monsters of the Multiverse would match the exact description of a Monster Manual 2, but I speculate the main drivers for its release were others. First and foremost, filling up the third spot for a rules expansion gift set. The fact it was released as a standalone book only a couple of months after the gift set supports this argument. And then, Monsters of the Multiverse is basically a reprint of the bestiary chapters of Volo's Guide to Monsters and Modern Canaan's Tome of Foes. I think it basically fulfills two goals of the upcoming release of 1D&D. On one hand, it makes small updates on monsters' stat blocks to streamline them with 1D&D. On the other hand, it discontinues Volo's Guide and Modern Canaan's Tome, which brought much lore on certain monster types. It seems to me that 1D&D aims to establishing that each monster can have whichever lore of its own on the different worlds of the multiverse. I think Wizards wants to get rid of any one-fits-all generic lore for each monster type, making room for them to have whichever specific lore that is fit for individual campaign settings. Player options books, such as Xanatar's Guide to Everything and Tasha's Cauldrons of Everything, usually reach many more sales than bestiaries. Under a marketing perspective, it's really a shame that releasing 30 new subclasses every year would probably destroy value in the long term, adding excessive rules and complexity and risking game balance. I think those figures help us a lot to understand what we can expect from next year's release of the Book of Many Things. I believe this book will be an attempt at providing an array of players' options without relying so heavily in new subclasses. What do you think? Do you agree with that assessment? Are you excited for the 2023 releases of Bigby Presents Glory of Giants? What about the Book of Many Things? Why has Wizards of the Coast not released your favorite campaign setting for 5th edition yet? Are we ever going to see Dark Sun in 5e? What about Forgotten Realms? Are we stuck with the Sword Coast forever, or will we see products focused on other regions? Whether you like it or not, what we got instead were settings like Strixhaven and the Radiant Citadel. Why would Wizards give priority for those new settings rather than classic ones? I think the answers for those questions are a combination of sales potential and marketing strategy. When we break the D&D sales figures down for campaign settings, we can see that classic D&D settings sell 50% more than Magic the Gathering settings, which are actually the underperformers of this product line. And yet, we have Ravnica, Theros, and Strixhaven out there. Why? Despite their lower sales, they have a core strategic value for D&D, which is converting part of the existing Magic fan base into new D&D players. Selling the first product for a new customer is much more valuable than selling the same product to an existing customer. An existing customer is expected to buy many other products in the future. In business, that's called a customer life cycle. When you bring a new customer to your fan base, you're not only selling a single product, but you are unlocking a full stream of future sales in that new customer's life cycle. For that reason, I expect to see more Magic the Gathering settings releases in the future. I'm not a Magic settings fan myself, and despite that, I don't see reason to worry. Despite the 20 years it took for Dragonlance to get back to D&D, it's here, and we're finally able to return to the world of Krynn. The same goes for Ravenloft, Spelljammer, and Planescape in 2023. Classic settings sell well. There are many D&D veterans who have returned to play, and we will surely be offered our share as well. The top performer among campaign settings is the only one new to 5e, the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. That helps us to understand why we got the call of the Netherdeep adventure only 2 years after the setting release. I think those strong sales hint to more Critical Role books to come, as well as brand new campaign settings for the future of D&D. As you can see, the rapid growth of D&D over the last years translates in a diversified fan base, and releasing products for all those different tastes is key to keep sales growing. That means classic settings for veteran players, Magic settings to convert an important fan base into D&D players, and new settings to the taste of a new generation of players. I think that's also the reason why we saw such releases as the Radiant Citadel Adventure Anthology. Speaking of adventures, let's also have a look at their sales breakdown, considering campaigns and anthologies. Both of them have a similar sales performance. I would guess anthologies are much easier and cheaper to produce, as they are less complex and rely a lot more on classic adventures revamps and third-party writers. So, I would expect that mix of anthologies and campaigns to be kept over the next years. I think the current product mix is a good indication of what we can expect for future years. Adventures leading the pack, followed by campaign settings and rules expansion books. The first year of 5e was naturally a busy one, as the core rules books were all released in 2014. Ever since, D&D has increased the number of new releases every 3 years, starting with 3 per year, then 4 per year, up to 5 per year until 2023. So, it would be fair to expect that after the release of one D&D, we start to see a few years with 6 annual releases. Given the current trend, I believe the mix tends to be something like that. 2 to 3 adventures every year, 2 campaign settings every year, and 1 to 2 rules expansions every year. Within those releases, I'm guessing we'll see a Critical Role adventure every 2 years, a classic setting every year, MTG settings and new settings in alternate years, and alternating releases of bestiaries and player options books. What do you expect for D&D releases in the future, and what would you most like to see? Finally, let's talk about what should we expect from the 5 D&D releases of 2023. For the first time ever, Wizards of the Coast made public its entire roster of D&D products for this coming year. While not much was said about them during their announcement, I gathered some scattered information that allow us to set our expectations about them. It's a new year, and with that, all eyes of the D&D community turn to the 2023 releases, which were announced a few months ago at an event called Wizards Presents. What should we expect from them? Have they got you excited? And what indications do they provide us for the future of D&D? Two of the books announced for 2023 are rules expansion books. Bigby presents Glory of Giants is a monster menagerie, while the Book of Many Things is a player options book. Glory of Giants is the definitive tome of giant gameplay in D&D. It seems to be the second book of an interesting new bestiary series that started with Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and that could potentially cover all 14 creature types from D&D. Just imagine, for instance, tomes dedicated to undead, fiend, fae, and humanoid creatures. I believe Glory of Giants will bring a similar content to Treasury of Dragons. That is, player options, such as spells and magic items, DM's tools for building giant-themed encounters, adventures, and campaigns, including support for building unique giant villains, NPCs, and followers, giant lairs, including maps and new legendary actions and treasure, and finally, a bestiary, which in the case of Treasury of Dragons, presented 70 new creatures. What do books like those bring to the literal game table? Well, they're a great source book for DMs who like to homebrew their own campaign, but don't have enough time to do all the work. Books like Treasury of Dragons and Glory of Giants provide you with all the necessary pieces you need to assemble your own dragon or giant-themed campaigns with minimum prepping time. Even if you're more of a homebrew purist, they deliver a lot of examples and inspiration that you can pick and choose to use in your own campaign. It's interesting to think that, contrary to 4E, Wizards has never published a Monster Manual 2 or 3. The closer they got to it was Monsters of the Multiverse, that, let's be frank about it, would have been a Monster Manual 2 if it weren't only an opportunistic reprint of the monsters of two previous books. I can imagine other monsters competing as reprints, just like Monsters of the Multiverse, but I don't think we'll see an original publication similar to a Monster Manual 2 in 5e. I'm positive many DMs love bestiaries with long lists of monsters. If you check the Dungeon Masters Guild digital store, you'll see that 3 of the top bestsellers are editions of the Monster Manual Expanded. Even so, I don't think this kind of product is appealing enough for most casual DMs. Rather, 5e seems to have first experimented with a mix of lore and monster list, with Volo's Guide to Monsters and Modern Canaan's Tome of Foes, to finally arrive in this monster-type drill-down formula we're seeing for dragons and giants. The Book of Many Things is a roster of new options for DMs and players. I think it's going to be much different than Xanators and Tasha's, as it wouldn't make sense to release a roster of new subclasses just a few months away from the release of the new 1D&D Core Rules books. I'm also guessing that the main goal for the Book of Many Things is to find a new player options book segment that doesn't rely as heavily on new subclasses, opening space for similar books in the future. Last July, an Unearthed Arcana covered a few feats and spells inspired by the Deck of Many Things, a classic D&D magic item. The following August, the 1D&D Character Origins file explored a new take on backgrounds and feats. Backgrounds will now combine 2 ability score increases, 2 skill proficiencies, 1 tool proficiency, 1 language, and 1 first level feat, allowing literally thousands of combinations among them, and therefore thousands of possible backgrounds. And yet, only 18 backgrounds were presented in the character's origins document. Feats in 1D&D will become available according to characters' levels. The Character Origins document presented many first-level feats, while the 1D&D Expert Classes document of September presented some 4th-level feats. Dragonlance revealed some new possibilities of such arrangements. 2 new backgrounds were introduced: Mages of High Sorcery and Knights of Solemnia. They unlock 2 first-level feats, Initiate of High Sorcery and Squire of Solemnia, respectively. They also unlock 3 other 4th level feats for each of those backgrounds. Why are those new mechanics relevant? Well, I'm guessing they're exactly the new frontier to be explored in this new type of player options books, just like the Book of Many Things. I'm expecting several new backgrounds and feats, as well as a relevant number of spells and magic items options, giving its inspiration on the classic Deck of Many Things magic item. So, if my speculation is correct, that's what we could expect from those books. Lots of DM options to bring giants to life in your campaign, in the Glory of Giants release, and a new frontier of player options in the Book of Many Things release. Is that the content you expect for those books as well? If so, do they make you excited? The D&D products I like the most to buy are adventures and campaign settings. Funny enough, I don't actually play most of them. I like best to homebrew my own adventures, which are usually set in the Forgotten Realms. But I find adventures and campaign settings an endless source of inspiration, as I get so many ideas from my own campaigns reading them. That's why I wanted to share my expectations about the much-awaited release of the Planescape campaign setting and the 2 adventures to be published in 2023. Keys from the Golden Vault, an adventure anthology, and the Phandelver campaign. Planescape for 5th edition is described as a campaign collection about Sigil and the multiverse beyond. I think that the word choice of collection in Wizards' announcement points to a similar gift set as we've seen for Spelljammer. Let's hope that at least this time it delivers a more comprehensive content and therefore a higher page count. Planescape is one of the last classic D&D settings that were completely missing up to its announcement. Dark Sun is yet another one that should make its way to the 5e roster at some point. Dragonlance will probably go through the same steps of Ravenloft, starting with its recently released adventure and followed in the future by a campaign setting book. Other potential classic settings revisits could be Greyhawk and a take on the Oriental settings, such as Al-Qadim and Karatur, exploring Arabic, Chinese, and Japanese medieval fantasy settings through a contemporary approach. I also have a great deal of expectation towards a more comprehensive Forgotten Realms campaign setting release in the future. Keys from the Golden Vault is a D&D anthology with heists at the center of each tale, and will be released very close to the D&D movie Honor Among Thieves, themed on, you guessed, a heist. Finally, the Phandelver campaign is a classic adventure that expands Lost Mine of Phandelver into a full campaign. Released within the original starter set, it's still one of the best 5e adventures to date. The word choice of expands worries me a bit. I fear that a good deal of the book may be a reprint of the starter set, as well as of the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak adventure in the Essentials kit, which also is staged around the town of Phandalin. Or even a reprint of the 3 sequels to that for that adventure released only in digital format in D&D Beyond. The recent publication of Monsters of the Multiverse, whose entire content is a reprint from other sourcebooks, sets a much uncomfortable precedent that unsettles me. If it were not for my concerns that Wizards could not resist the temptation of reprinting released 5e content disguised as new, I would be mega excited about the Phandelver campaign. After all, a good deal of it could be staged at the nearby city of Neverwinter, that would bring fond memories on the many of us who've played the classic video game series, and would be an outstanding IP to advertise the Phandelver campaign. I can say that I am quite thrilled about the 2023 releases, and a little bit worried about Planescape and the Phandelver campaign. What about you? Which of those releases are most exciting for you? We talked about a lot of things, so let's try to wrap it up. I get really curious and filled with expectations about new D&D releases, and that excitement always made me wonder what drives the choice of which book to publish next, including the ones that were announced for 2023. I used to work in strategy consulting firms, and one of the things that I used to do in this job was building the perceived strategy of computing firms within a market segment. In order to do that, you basically build estimates and assumptions from whichever data and market knowledge is available. So I wanted to share the perceived strategy for D&D book releases, including a neat sales estimation I built using the volume of Amazon reviews as a proxy. Here's some of the questions I believe I managed to answer. 1. What are the best-selling D&D books? If we use core rules as a 100 base index, as they are the best-selling product line, we can check the relative performance of other products. The next in line are expanded rules books, then starter sets, campaign settings, and lastly, adventures. But the gap of all of them to core rules sales is huge, and that explains the drive to release a new set of core rules books within one D&D. There is an important lesson learned from the transition from 3E to 4E, which is a reboot can damage your product. That's why one D&D is a compromise between the desire to launch new core rules books, but without scrapping the successful and stable game system in place. D&D also learned from 4E the importance of preserving game balance and simplicity, two things that are majorly impacted by expanded rules books. And I think that's the reason why, despite their great sales, we don't see as many of them published. 2. What's the strategy behind the release of new D&D books? It's basically a combination of attracting new customers and making more sales, while keeping fans playing and preserving the game system stability. New core rules and starter sets are limited by their own nature, so the golden geese of sales are really expanded rules books. I think that's why D&D is testing new types of content in that front. A look on campaign settings also help us understand the role of the many Magic the Gathering settings we've seen so far. Despite their lower sales, they have a strategic role of converting Magic fans into new D&D customers. But the higher sales of classic settings and new settings, such as Wild Mount, gives me comfort we'll see many other of those releases in the future. As for adventures, they have the core role of keeping fans playing despite their lower sales volume. 3. What should we expect from the 5 D&D releases of 2023? Glory of Giants seems to be the second volume of a new line of bestiaries focused on monster types, started with Treasury of Dragons. The Book of Many Things will likely be a player options book that doesn't rely so heavily on new subclasses, and rather on new backgrounds and feats that will gain renewed importance within one D&D. Keys from the Golden Vault is a heist adventure anthology aimed at surfing on the release of Honor Among Thieves, which is a heist movie. The Phandelver campaign will expand the Last Line of Phandelver adventure, but I think there is a chance it reprints other published materials, such as the Essentials Kit adventure and its D&D Beyond sequels. Lastly, Planescape is likely to repeat the Spelljammer gift set format. Let's hope that with many more pages this time. Of course, whenever you build a perceived strategy like this, you gotta rely heavily on common sense, bits of information, and your own knowledge on the subject. And that clearly gives room for missing bits, imprecisions, and even blunt mistakes. So tell me, what do you think I'm dead wrong about? And what important insight do you think I'm missing? If you're interested in the content of this video and would like to know more from us, click on the link on the description below to download for free our booklet, Make Your Character Matter. You can also find more related content in our social networks. All links are available in the description below. If you want to check out a module where we apply all concepts discussed in this channel, look out for our new campaign, The Kingdom of Cormyr, One Purple Raven, available in 2023. Clicking on the screen, you may find other videos on D&D products and more. If you think our content might be interesting for you, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell to receive notifications for new videos. This video makes part of our series on the future of Dungeons & Dragons. In this series, we will discuss everything that will shape the future of the game, including detailed analysis of 1D&D rules playtesting and D&D upcoming product releases. And yet, the best way to shape the future of Dungeons & Dragons is sharing our feedback and impressions about what's being published and that will be published. So be sure to share your reactions and perceptions in the comments down below. Which of the 2023 D&D releases you are most excited about? I'm sure your opinions will help us think along with many other people. Thank you for sharing this moment with us. We are the Deep Dice Press.